Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Scott Luton and the one and only Kevin L. Jackson here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Kevin, how you doing today?
It's been a great week. I mean, I'm excited about a lot of things, but today's show, I've been waiting for it. You know, I tell you, Lexmark is one of my favorite companies.
Man, that's high praise coming from Kevin L. Jackson. Well, Kevin, I am too. We've been looking forward to this. Excellent show lined up. One of our favorite repeat guests is back. She's an award-winning mover and shaker doing big things out in global industry. And today we're going to be talking about the critical intersection, I'll call it, of manufacturing, supply chain, and technology. So it should be a great show, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. These are three key aspects of every business.
Today's episode, we should make sure to mention, it's presented in partnership with our friends at Microsoft, who's doing some pretty cool things in industry, helping to move us all forward for sure. We'll touch on that maybe towards the end of today's conversation. So, Kevin, are we ready to introduce one of my favorite guests?
Yeah, I'm holding on. Let's do this.
Holding on, edge of the seat. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, our featured guest today is an award-winning business leader. Our guest brings more than 30 years of experience in the high-tech industry and then some. In her current role, she's responsible for product delivery strategy, which includes areas such as supply chain, manufacturing, hardware, and supplies development, and a lot more. So back by popular demand, please join me in welcoming Tonya Jackson, Senior Vice President and Chief Product Delivery Officer with Lexmark. Tonya, how you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Kevin.
Well, yes, I'm excited.
We are too. Now, I've told Kevin I've got Tonya Jackson under ruse. We've really enjoyed our conversations. And, you know, apart from all the lip service, Tonya, I mean, you're doing it. You've been recognized by a variety of folks for your leadership and a lot of the innovations that you are doing at Lexmark. So we're going to dive right into all of that today. But Tonya and Kevin, before we get into all that good stuff, I'm looking out my window.
Yeah.
And it's raining a little bit today, a little spring rain, but Tonya and Kevin, it has like been 72 degrees, sun's out. I've got some bluebird babies. I mean, it's just been a gorgeous time of year. Farmers market's about to open up, right, in the next couple of weeks. So I want to start with a little fun warm-up question, Tonya. I know you're originally from North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. You live in Kentucky now.
I do.
So we've shared some of those stories and kindred spirits there. What's one thing, Tonya, that you look forward to this time of year every year?
Okay, Scott. So thanks for that, because this is spring in Kentucky, and I'll give a shout out and a nod to Keeneland, which is the spring meet that is the horse race track that we have here in Lexington. So last weekend, I was actually at Keeneland and with some family and friends, and it was just a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun to go out on a weekend and see the horses, see family, see friends, and just have a really good time. So Keeneland and spring in Kentucky is that April meet. And
love it.
And in Lexington in particular is Keeneland.
I bet there's some good food there too.
Some great food. Yeah, amazing food.
No,
so Kevin, that's me tough to top. Tanya's set the bar.
No, sorry. I'm gonna have to throw a flag here. I'm gonna have to throw a flag.
Okay.
It's Louisville. I tell you, it's Louisville, Kentucky, where spring is hot. Okay. I see. I kept this as a surprise.
Yes.
I lived in Louisville when I was young. I went to Thomas Jefferson High School. When I was in the marching band, I played at Churchill Downs.
Okay. All right. That's one upping me. Okay, then. Okay. All right. If we're gonna be like that. This how the show's gonna be.
We played when Secretariat ran.
Oh.
That was one of the highlights of my life. So
awesome.
I'm going to have to say the Kentucky Derby. What I look forward to in the spring. But now that I live in Virginia, I'm looking for the first trip down to Virginia Beach, where the water's not when it's not too cold, right?
Wow. All right. So Tonya, I've knocked out a couple hundred interviews and shows with Kevin L. Jackson. I learned something new. He played in the band. So Kevin,
what instrument though?
Yes,
that's what he didn't say. I noticed that he didn't say. He said a lot about Louisville and
I played. No, I'm proud. I played the flute actually.
Okay.
And I actually went on and played jazz flute and R&B when I was in college, and sax. And a little bit of keyboard. So hey, come on, I'm ready.
I played the flute, but
you played the flute too.
So Scott, we're approaching cousin status here.
Yeah.
But my career ended at high school. I didn't take it to college. I did all right, but I wasn't that good. I stopped at high school.
Tonya and Kevin, we've always talked about kind of getting the band back together. Supply Chain Jam Band coming to a town near you, a road show. As much as I enjoyed that, we got to get to work, folks. We got a lot of stuff to get to. I can't wait to get an update on all the cool things Tonya and her team been up to. Kevin, where are we starting here as we get to work with Tonya?
Well, actually, aside from playing the flute, I've really enjoyed Tonya's interviews in the past here on Supply Chain Now. As a refresher for our listeners, could you please briefly tell us a little bit about Lexmark and your role as Chief Product Delivery Officer, Tonya?
Yeah, sure. So let me start with Lexmark first. I introduced it a little bit that our headquarters are here in Lexington, Kentucky. We are a global organization, and we basically work to provide our customers with imaging devices as well as IoT technologies. And our long history has been one of kind of looking at an industry specific approach to printers and imaging. So we set up, kind of verticals in whether it's banking, government, healthcare, education, so we can develop solutions that are very specific to solving a customer's problems. So that's our kind of our core business. And as I said, we've always done managed print services, not always, but we've done managed print services a long time. And you would maybe appreciate it. We'd like to say MPS, or managed print services. That was the kind of original IoT before IoT was a thing, right? We were phoning home to tell printer, so we would know when to send supplies, send service parts, send those kinds of things, so that the customer wouldn't have to deal with any of that. So we were always in that business of putting sensors in devices and monitoring that with portals and those kinds of things. So we've taken that technology that we've always used in printers and now are developing another business to connect other things that a customer may have, whether it's office equipment, whether it's hospital, equipment, things that need to be on some kind of service rotation so that we can deploy our same technology instead of with printers with other equipment. So that's an emerging part of the business. Where my team, we are solidly in what we call the imaging business, and the product delivery group that we have is it is a combined organization that has research and development, supply chain, and service delivery all in. So, and sustainability. So it's kind of end to end from the product design development, making sure that we are developing something that we can source and manufacture for a very long time, because our supplies last a very long time in terms of, people continuing to replenish their devices. And we have, again, a strong sustainability group that is helping us, whether it's recycled content, developing refurbishment models and those types of things, so that we can, once the customer has the device and is no longer wants to upgrade or whatever, we can get that device back, refurbish, remanufacture, get it back out into the field. So the cool thing is that the organization is feeding each other. So the service team is saying these are the components or the modules that maybe development needs to focus more on, because I'm replacing these too much, right? And so what do we need to do there from a design perspective? And I've talked about it. We're not going to talk about the supply chain crisis on this one. It's still pretty traumatic. But but the fact that the design team works so closely now with the sourcing and the supply chain team is just going to be a better. We'll talk about resiliency a little bit, but we are building resiliency because we are designing something with the manufacturing aspect of it in mind now.
So there's so much there, man. It's like a series within a series. Just a couple of things before we move on, Kevin. Not only sounds like Lexmark was IoT before IoT was cool, but also customer experience. They were doing a lot of that stuff before that became such a big thing here, right? And the other
Yeah.
thing, Kevin, before I get your comment, maybe is I loved the focus. One of the focuses that Tonya shared on remanufacturing and refurbishment. There's so much we can be doing there that will help in some of our other efforts that we're charged with as leaders. So, Kevin, your quick thoughts before I move forward.
One thing that really jumped out at me was the end-to-end approach, right? Organizationally, they have positioned themselves to really provide the service to the end customer that they need. That's important. That's critical in any business. And I like the approach. It's many companies fail to organizationally address that service
That's right.
to the end customer.
That's right. I bet that helps with some of the silo busting that's got to go on to get stuff done and get it done at a certain level. So good call out there, Kevin. Tonya, so much more to get into here today. I want to ask you about when it comes in particular to manufacturing operations within global supply chain, what's 2 or 3 topics or trends that are priorities or maybe high on your radar, I'll call it, to you and the Lexmark leadership team right now?
Yeah. So a couple of things here, Scott. Some of it, I'm going to go back a little bit up the chain, and then it ends up with manufacturing. One of the things that all of us have learned, and the focus is on simplification. So it's not just simplification in manufacturing, it's what manufacturing is receiving, whether that's simplifying the portfolio, common parts, all those back to the design phase, so that the manufacturing process can really be more efficient instead of a bunch of changeovers and all of those kinds of things that typically have to happen. What can we do to minimize through the design, through the portfolio management, working back with marketing, sales, and still you still want a disruptive and a differentiated offering. You can still do all of those things. You can't have it all, one way, but what are the key things, key functions, key features, and how can we design that so that we can make sure from a manufacturing perspective, we have the response that we need at the cost that we need and all those kinds of things. So it's not what's happening on the manufacturing floor, but it's the things that we need to do upstream to give manufacturing a fighting chance to do what they do well, and instead of having to make a lot of adjustments. And the other thing is perhaps more broad as well, and that's just the manufacturing footprint and the whole diversification. And we're looking at, like everyone else, what do you want your manufacturing footprint to look like? Where do you want it to be located? How many partners do you want? How you want really long-term partners now? Because those are some of the lessons, again, from the crisis. Some of the best results were people that you've been working with a long time and that just kind of helped you just work together to get through it. So trying to make sure that we have the right partners and that we are working with those partners to grow their capabilities. And then also looking at really from a global perspective, where do we want to manufacture what, and how do we want to set up what we call regional manufacturing. In some places you want to base in one country maybe, but you have customers over a large customer base in another region, and do you want a regional, kind of hub there? And then I talked a little bit about sustainability, and I think as we get into, and you've probably done some podcasts on the greenhouse gas reporting, scope 3, and most people can do scope 1 and 2. Right. But when you get into scope 3 with that value chain, where you have lots of manufacturing, so trying to just start to understand what we're measuring, get a good baseline on the value chain. On our own operations, I think we're in good shape, but on everything else is working with the partners to make sure that we're understanding what their challenges are, what their goals are. And then we talked a little bit about supply chain transparency and the auditing our suppliers, because we're ultimately responsible. So what's going on from a social perspective there? So those are some of the things that we're working on, as well as, and we'll talk a little bit about it, how to be more efficient in terms of what we're doing to digitize some of the operations, and of course automation. With automation, I think we're getting smarter about what to automate, because you can over automate and then you're just, you got a lot of equipment that you can't do anything with. So what part of the processes should we automate, and making sure even then that we're designing for automation, because you don't want to design something that you're building and then go automate it. You can do it, but it's just not as efficient. So that's a little bit on the digital side. I know we'll talk a little bit about that, but for us, it's about simplification and then diversification, and then a large piece of sustainability. And one thing I didn't say, and I think is understood, sustainability, remanufacturing, recycling, reusing, all of that, while it is definitely good for the environment, it is the right thing to do. It is a cost savings. When you can reuse something, you don't need to do a bunch of business cases for it. It's common sense. And I think sometimes people get tied up with, well, is there a business case for that? And that if you can't save money by reusing something, you're doing it
There's
wrong.
a problem.
So you don't need to spend a bunch of time trying to, argue internally about the benefit. It is going to save you money. And the more you do that, and the more the whole team gets jazzed and excited about it, it gets everybody's creative juices start to flow back from the design. Again, what can we, that you're going to design a part, how many times can I reuse this? And in manufacturing, they're sitting there trying to figure out all of the things that they can do to reuse things. So sustainability it is obviously important from a social perspective, but it is good business from cost savings. And customers are asking more and more for it, for sure. But don't think that it's it's going to cost me something to recycle.
Right. It seems like you're dealing with trying to find that balance between onshoring, offshoring, and nearshoring. Many companies are trying to deal with that because it affects all of those other aspects that running a business that you mentioned, including sustainability. One question I had, however, is data. How does data help you in understanding the decision space, right, between onshoring, offshoring, and nearshoring? How do you make that decision? Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so data is a few different forms, and we can hopefully talk about. I'll try to answer it, and if I'm missing the data question, come back to me. So what we would look at is what we call a landed cost, right? And to look at the data, we would start the data crunching starts with the complexity of the supply chain and where the components come from, not just where the tier one where you're assembling, right? But where all of these components coming from. And we've built a tool, we've talked about it before, period, is heavily using Power BI to understand where our center of gravity is from first of all our customer set, but also all of the data that's going back and forth with the suppliers, because the supply chain is pretty complicated, tier one down to tier X. And so where are all of those components coming from? And then also what's the geopolitical state that's going on with the various countries that we may be looking for? What's the cost associated in those countries? And then we work closely with our finance team also to take all of our kind of operational data with all of the financial data, then with the of course the sales team, because that's where the customers are, what matters. And then where should we, if we look at all of those things, what are options? And it starts with options, and you iterate from there. And if you have the data roughly in one place, you can just start to pull levers and start to run some scenarios digitally, right? Without having to do a bunch of pilots, right? You just start to model some things and put some best case, worst cases in whatever format that people are looking for, because some people are looking for customer impact, some people are looking for the bottom line cost, some people are looking for how much inventory do you have to pile up. All of those things we can get there if we've got a reasonable handle on data. And it's not perfect, it is not, but in general, we have worked really hard to take the data that we have, which is an abundance of data in anybody's supply chain, but to figure out what is it telling us, and what is the answer that is given us, and then how can we put that toward an outcome, right? So it's a bit of an ongoing battle. And one of the things I want to put a plug in here is I have a peer, his name is Vishal. He heads up our technology group. And when we talk about data, it's really interesting because we have a group that does data analysis, right? What he's done is partnered with North Carolina State, and we are training data analysts internally.
Love that.
Wow.
Really hard to go hire a bunch of data analysts, but the cool thing is that we have supply chain people that are getting this certification. Because that way they're getting the training to handle this data, but they understand the business, right? Because sometimes you get a data analyst and they don't they're
the
great with the
context.
data, but the context is just hard,
all about
right?
the context.
It's just all about the context. And what that does for us is it gives us this expert or several experts that know the business. They love what they're doing, but now instead of doing things the way we've always done them, they come at it from a digital and a data perspective, and they can help us take all of this stuff that's been sitting in files and, you know, whatever, and we don't and actually, you know, make it something that's much more, you know, usable. And so it gives them career growth. And I'm sure we're going to talk about one of the big things, obviously, is making sure that you don't do any of this that I'm talking about without really great people.
Right.
And people want to continue to grow and learn and be challenged. And so we have people that grew up in supply chain that are now, you know, getting their data scientists, and they come back, they take the training. It's pretty intense. They come back and they apply that in our organization, which is really fantastic.
All right. I always say that, you know, digital transformation is about the people, and that's what you're showing.
He does. He says that. He says that. Hey, I'm going back upstream to those horse races y'all both are talking about, because I'm chomping at the bit to jump in this conversation.
You know, I'm not sure I want to go back to the horse races. He totally destroyed me with Churchill Downs. So anyway.
Well, that was my first job. That was actually my first job. I was an usher at Churchill Downs.
Okay. Man, you never know. You never know what Kevin's going to bring to the table here. Tonya, there's so much in what you shared there. And I just want to call a few things out for our listeners. What's old is new again, and powerful simplicity. You know, I was talking with the chief supply chain officer of one of the country's largest nonprofit healthcare organizations, and we were talking about what got them through the crisis and the pandemic. And a big theme of his answer was reducing variance, right? And eliminating waste. And we've heard those thousands of times. We've acted on that millions of times, but they are extremely powerful. You mentioned the ecosystem and how you're responsible. Lexmark is responsible for what goes on in the ecosystem. It's not within the four walls. And I loved your statement there, because that's more and more, I'm hoping more leaders across supply chain and really across global business really accept that responsibility, because we'll be able to eliminate a lot of bad actors and bad things. And then lastly, on a lighter note, you mentioned common sense and how everything doesn't have to have a business case. Well, I would argue that many things are short in supply here these days. Still, common sense, unfortunately, is still one of them, Tonya and Kevin. So we'll see if that changes. But Kevin and Tonya, I want to move us into Kevin. Do you want to comment on any of those things before I move us forward?
Well, I think I really appreciate the holistic approach that Tonya is outlining. I mean, it's not just about inside the four walls.
Right.
They actually understand and appreciate the importance of their partners across the ecosystem. And that's good. That's really good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I even touched on that great NC State program, creating opportunities for folks, learning opportunities and credentials and more. Okay. So for the sake of time, I got to move us forward. Tonya, we want to talk about, and maybe you touched on some of these in your earlier responses, but what else would you consider a couple of initiatives that Lexmark has rolled out in recent years to move your digital transformation forward?
Yeah, I'll just, for the sake of time, I'll talk about one in a broad way. So we have a offering. As I said, we've taken our learnings and our expertise in IoT in general, and we're using that we've developed a commercial offering. It's called Optra. That's our trade name, which goes back to our heritage. Our first laser printer was branded Optra, and so it's kind of a cool. But it's called Optra Edge. And so we're using the edge technology, and we're looking at it from a manufacturing setting of when you have things sitting. What things can be anything. It could be, you have things that come into your factory and they sit, and then they get moved. It could be a line that's running and how fast it's takt time, those kinds of things. But and so what we're doing is installing visual or cameras, and to monitor some of these stages where things are being staged, or inspections. And there's always inspections at anybody's manufacturing operation. And a lot of times they're sometimes with cameras, sometimes they're people or whatever, But we're getting smarter with using what we call Optra Edge, which is really our IoT device, and we're using the edge technology so that we get the information quick and we can respond to it. And what we're looking for are variances, things that or things that are not moving. Why are they not moving? And then you can do your regular manufacturing process in terms of lean and continuous improvement. But you have the data the data there to say, okay, this is I see I've had these pallets sitting here for this long. Why haven't they moved? And you can actually start to act on that. You have the data to go act on it. So again, this is we work with our technology team to do some product development, to say they have customers that are asking these questions. We have similar questions, not exactly the same, maybe the same process, same questions. They use our manufacturing facilities to build the skills that are the AI skills that are needed to go in, and then they can go back and offer and explain to customers, hey, this is what we do within our own manufacturing facility. We get a benefit because we're improving our operations. And at the same time, they get real data when customers are saying, yeah, I see what you say you could do, but can you actually do it? And we could go back and say, this is what we're doing. So we're working closely with our internal team, and it's really about anything that needs inspection, something needs to be moved, things are not moving, you got bottlenecks and all those kinds of things. The only difference is it's digital now. And then we can look at that data and act on it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin, I'm going to come to you for your quick response in a second. But I want to add one of the phrases that Tonya shared there in her response was getting information quickly. That reminded me of a really well-known food company, well-known for like iconic pickles. And one of their long-term CEOs and chairman of the boards, one of his mantras was, give me good news fast and bad news faster, and yeah. So we laugh because it's kind of a cliche, but it is really so important. And, Tonya's was kind of sharing some of the reasons why, but Kevin, respond to some of the things they're doing to drive their digital transformation forward there at Lexmark.
Well, one of the things I heard was it's a trend across manufacturers, and that's using cameras backed by artificial intelligence to do improve quality assurance. Inspections is a big area where this can be very helpful, and observing the manufacturing line, if you have these hiccups or delays, and it really improves the end product. So 2 thumbs up on that one. So that's a great move, and you seem to be ahead of the curve in that area.
We're back to Siskel and Ebert in supply chain. Kevin, we were talking about this the other day. Tonya, you're getting 2 thumbs up from Kevin Jackson for digital transformation.
That's a flash in the past there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, I guess it probably helps in some other areas in your business, because you recently shared a perspective on supply chain resilience. What are a couple of the key factors that you consider to be critical for optimizing that resilience of your or any organization?
Yeah, appreciate that. So everybody in supply chain is talking about resiliency now, and I think we've talked about it before. It doesn't mean, and maybe this is a me statement, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a disruption, right? Because things happen. But what we are trying to do is take all of the lessons learned from what we've been through and the decisions that we made and the risk that we took and the speed. All of those things were so good because we had no choice. And so we want to what we call institutionalize all of those learnings. But we did it because we had to, but now we want to do it because, okay, we know how to do it. Everybody's comfortable making those decisions, and we're going to be smarter about some of our decisions that we made. And
it's good business.
It's good business sense. And the organization that we have, I think there's a lot more collaboration about what we are designing and how that can be, we can design to withstand to avoid some of those disruptions, meaning more common parts, meaning more dual sources out the gate. All of those kinds of things are how we're trying to do, to avoid that disruption. And then there's something happens. And then it's kind of, okay, how do you kind of fight through it? We have everybody in supply chain now has a better playbook on how to do that. And a lot of that, and I want to make sure I say that it includes, when you're fighting through a disruption, is that you're taking care of the people. and that
Mm-hmm.
the people have been and continue to be amazing. And so making sure that from a leader perspective, my job is to support and listen and all of those things, because people are going to come forward with great ideas, and it's a matter of offering that support. And then what we're trying to really embrace is stuff's going to happen. How do we come out stronger? What's our recovery like? Let's talk about, okay, this has been a blow. How fast can we get through it? And can we be stronger? Again, going, what did we learn? And can we be stronger? So it's not about never having a disruption. That's just not going to happen.
Possible.
It's not possible. Because a lot of people initially were saying, never wants to happen again. Stuff happens, right? But it's just, what are you learning from it? And how do you develop that muscle to just take the blow, figure out real quick, this is the action plan, make sure you're listening, have the right people working on things, and then come out even, recover and come out stronger. I'd say that's kind of our philosophy of how we're approaching it.
Oh, I love that. Organizations don't need to be brittle. They have to be ductile, right? They have to be able to take the hit and still operate. So that's a great approach.
Stuff is going to happen. And acknowledging that, as simple as it may sound, acknowledging that it goes a long way towards becoming more anti-fragile, right? Maybe. And then the other thing you mentioned there, Kevin, everybody's talking about AI, but few people are really doing truly practical, bottom line, impactful things with it, right? We're making lots of progress. And it reminded me, the way she said that, Kevin, reminded me of the old phrase, I don't know who said it first, but everybody talks about the weather, but no one does anything about it.
Can't
right?
do anything about it. Right. Right.
So what an outstanding overview. I hate that we're kind of coming around the, well, should I continue the horse themes coming around the final turn? I don't know.
Yeah, the final stretch.
That works.
That's right.
That works.
Coming down the home stretch. So
we have to get you down to Kentucky.
Yes, Tonya, we'll do this in person at the track next time. Okay.
Yeah,
how's that sound?
Absolutely.
Keeneland. That's right. Keeneland first.
Okay. Let you slide on that
Kevin's
one.
fighting that. Okay.
Okay, Kevin. Okay. You still got Churchill down. Sorry.
That's
I can
right.
see.
Hey, you got the twin spires coming.
So
You
Kevin,
Yep.
kidding aside, what a great conversation we had here with Tonya Jackson, and we're not quite done. We're gonna make sure folks know how to connect with her and all the cool things that her and the Lexmark team are doing. But before we do that, Microsoft has helped bring this conversation to our global audience. And as I mentioned on the front end, the company is doing some really cool things in the industry as well. What's one thing that Microsoft's doing that comes to mind, especially in like the manufacturing supply chain space, Kevin?
Well, Tonya talked a lot about data and how much data they are collecting throughout their entire process. And they have to crunch the numbers, okay? They have to analyze that data so they can actually listen to the data, know what the data is telling them. And in today's world, cloud platforms is really how you crunch the numbers. The power of the cloud is being able to bring all of that computational resources when you need it and not paying for it when you don't. And that's one of the things that Microsoft Azure is really doing well in the manufacturing community, because historically manufacturers have a lot of on-premise IT. They don't want to let go of that IT. But more and more, since everything is being data-driven, they are transitioning to a hybrid environment. Yes, they have on-premise components like the Azure Stack, but it's connected to the cloud so that they can reach out and get that power when they need to crunch those numbers. And I think that's really critical across manufacturing and supply chains.
Kind of the best of both worlds there. I love that. Power on demand, huh? Okay. And I got to throw this last thing in, Tonya. We're going to, I'd love to make sure folks know how to connect with you. But hey, we were talking AI a second ago. And one of the things that Greg White likes to say, there's no guarantee that artificial intelligence is actual intelligence. And I think that's some directional knowledge we got to keep in mind. Yeah. Okay. So Tonya, you're illustrating why you're backed by popular demand here at Supply Chain Now. Really a breath of fresh air. I love how simple you keep, because you're really talking about some really complex things, some really tough challenges that any organization is fighting through right now. But I love the altitude that you keep it at. So for folks that want to learn more, they want to connect with you. I know you do keynotes and stuff, and those are some fortunate audiences. All the cool things Lexmark is doing that you described some of which here. How can folks learn more?
I can be reached at Tonya.Jackson at Lexmark.com. If you want to learn more about, Kevin did a great job talking about the cloud enabled. We have cloud enabled print. You can visit Lexmark, just lexmark.com. A lot of that information is out there about what we do to help our customers move to the cloud from a print perspective. And then the Optra offering that I talked about, there's a lot of good information about our Optra offering for manufacturing on our website, lexmark.com as well.
Outstanding. Now, Kevin,
Right.
she's fearless. She dropped the email out there.
Absolutely.
I love how Tonya also mentioned, because Kevin wrote the book on cloud. I learned a lot about the cloud by rubbing elbows with Kevin every so often. Tonya, big thanks to what you spend some time with us, sharing some of the things you are doing to navigate through some innovative things. And really just from a leadership standpoint, some of the ways that you sprinkle in some of your approach to leadership as you shared that. Big breath of fresh air. And I really appreciate your time here with us here today, Tonya.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me again. And thank you, Kevin. It's been a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Really.
You bet. All right. So big thanks to Tonya Jackson with Lexmark. Make sure you connect with her and tune in to some of the things they're doing there and really learn from her leadership and Lexmark's innovation. Big thanks again to our collaborative partners over at Microsoft as well. Kevin, always a pleasure to knock out these conversations with you. I learn a ton and we have a lot of fun. But hey, kidding aside, you've set the world on fire with digital transformers, amongst other things. How can folks connect with you and tune into that series?
Well, first I have to say, Tonya is definitely a digital transformer. She highlighted all of the reasons why it's critical for your organization to digitally transform. So thank you, Tonya. You're going to they may renew me for another year. But digital transformers, that's Supply Chain Now, and you could reach out to us at Digital Trans X on Twitter, or Digital Transformers with Kevin L. Jackson on LinkedIn. And you can get me on LinkedIn as well. And Twitter, it's Kevin_Jackson. So just hit me up anytime.
He's everywhere, folks. But hey, also you can get Digital Transformers and Supply Chain Now wherever you get your podcast from. So a lot of great work there, Kevin. Appreciate your thought leadership and helping folks navigate this digital transformation era that we're all fighting through. All right, to our listeners, hey, I hope y'all enjoyed this conversation as much as we had a blast from talking springtime and horses and horse tracks and comparing some of the members there, all through a variety of shop talk, global supply chain, manufacturing, technology, and a lot more. So again, big thanks to our friends over at Microsoft. Big thanks to all of our listeners out there. But we got to challenge you with one thing here, right? We learned a lot from Tonya and Kevin. I like to do all these shows all the time, but it's all about putting these thoughts and these ideas into action. Deeds, not words. That's where the rubber meets the road. So with that said, Scott Luton challenging you to do good, to get forward, and to be the change. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.